I'm Angela Bikey, and today we're going to be going over VDOT specifications. There are different specifications that you were given in this class. We have a standard specification that would be in VDOT's 2016 specification book. You were also given a special provision for Section 211, as well as a supplemental specification of 211. Before we go over the content in the specification, I want to make sure that everyone knows the hierarchy of these specifications and what overrules what. Your special provision is your top of the line. It overrules everything that you're given so far in this class. That's followed by your supplemental specifications, which are the changes to anything that is in our Chapter 211 in the 2016 specification book. If your contract has a special provision copy note, that overrules everything. Those are project specific, so we won't be going over those in this class. What we're going to do now is we're going to go through Chapter 211 and hit some of the high points that you should know, not only for this class, but for producing asphalt for the state of Virginia. If you open your Mixed Design and VDOT Specifications book and you turn to Section 211, Asphalt Concrete, that's what we're going to be going over now. 211.01 is just the description of the specification. It's saying that this specification will oversee our super pave mixes. The chart in Chapter 211.01 will give you all of your mix types that you will see in your contracts, as well as your minimum asphalt performance grade that's required for those mixes. Under that chart, you'll see a definition for nominal maximum size. That definition is defined as one sieve size larger than the first sieve to retain more than 10% aggregate. You've heard that definition multiple times throughout this class. It is something that you should know when you're designing mixes. 211.02 talks about the different materials that go into your asphalt mix designs. We have our binders, our coarse aggregates, our fine aggregates, our mineral filler, and the requirements that those materials need to meet. In 211.02b, under coarse aggregates, it will tell you that you need to run flat and elongated as well as your coarse aggregate angularity. Those are done on the aggregate sizes retained on or above the number 4 sieve. Our fine aggregate is letter C, and that talks that you need to do your fine aggregate angularity according to AASHTO T304 method A, and your sand equivalency, which is AASHTO T176. Letter D will talk about after you do your gradation, if 10% or more of the material passes the number 4, then you will run sand equivalency on that material. If 10% or more passes the number 8 sieve, then that will be tested for your fine aggregate angularity. Table 2-12A is your aggregate properties and your consensus properties that were covered earlier in this class. It will tell you what the requirements are for your coarse aggregate angularity, your F&E, your sand equivalency, and your fine aggregate angularity, and what those requirements are per mix type. Being able to read this table is very important for while you're designing and selecting your aggregates for your mix. In 211.02H, it talks about anti-stripping additives. You can use a chemical additive or you can use hydrated lime. Your anti-strip additive should be on a VDOT materials approved list. It's approved list number 7. And it needs to be added at a rate of no less than 0.3% of your total asphalt content of your mixture. Once you add your anti-strip additive, you also need to run a TSR testing. Specification requirement is no less than 0.8 for your design. Letter I talks about your hydrated lime. If you choose to use hydrated lime, it's added at a rate of not less than 1% by weight of your total aggregate. And it talks a little bit about how you need to add it into your plant. Letter J talks about our reclaimed asphalt pavement or RAP, and if you're going to use it into your mix. Couple high points for your RAP: you don't want it to contact an open flame, and you need to handle it and store it the same way you handle any of your other types of aggregate. You don't want any contamination, segregation, or anything like that. You also want to process your RAP. The largest size stone that you can have is no more than 2 inches. Letter K talks about reclaimed asphalt shingles, or RAS. There's 2 different types. There's a tear-off and there's a tab. If you're using RAS in your mix, you would want to read those 2 sections. 211.03 talks about your job mix formula. This section of the book is mainly what you cover in this class as you're doing mix design. The first paragraph just talks about how you turn in your mix. Your cover sheet needs to be turned into the department through PLAD, and your supporting documentation, all of your calculations, aggregate properties, and anything else that's been covered in this class needs to be submitted on paper to the department. Your job mix formula needs to be within the design range of the specification, with a single percentage of aggregate passing every sieve, a single percentage of your asphalt content, a temperature for which your mix is going to be produced, and a temperature at which it's going to be compacted, in accordance with AASHTO R35, as well as what's in section 211. Letter A talks about that your super paved mixes need to be in accordance with AASHTO R35, and you need to have all of the equipment that's outlined in that, as well as an AASHTO T312. And every company needs to have a asphalt mix design technician on staff. Letter B talks about that you need to complete and turn in your super paved design test data, your ignition furnace calibrations that are done in accordance with VTM 102, and your binder supplier recommendations. Letter 3 talks about 3 trial blends for gradation and how that is required. Down at the bottom of that page is Table 2-13. Those are your design ranges for your different mix types. And it goes across the top, shows you the specific sieves, and down along the left-hand column shows you your mix types. You want to make sure you can read this table. It's extremely important. That way you know what to design your mix to. So we're going to do one example to make sure that everybody knows how to read this table. And on the number 8 sieve for an SM 12.5A, what is my design range? It is going to be a 34 to 50. Hopefully everybody saw that number and understands how we found it. If not, please stop somebody and ask. Table 2-14 talks about your mix design criteria. That table gives us all of our volumetric properties and what you're going to design to. It gives us our VFA for production. It gives us our VFA for design. For this class and for when you're designing mixes, that's the column you would look at for VFA. It gives us our minimum VMA, our fines to asphalt ratio, and our number of gyrations per mix. Table 2-13 and Table 2-14 are different between what's printed in your book and what's in your supplemental specification. So when you're looking and you're doing your designs, you would always want to look at the most recent type of specification, which would be your supplemental and/or your special provision. A couple notes at the bottom of Table 2-14 that are important to know. Your A and D mixes are designed at 4.0 air voids. Your E mixes are designed at 3.5% air voids. And your base mix is designed at 2.5% air voids. In section 211.03, letter D, number 6, gives us our mixing and our compaction temperatures for testing for all of our mix types. These temperatures are very important to make sure you know. Letter A talks about your mixes designated an A mix. The mix temperature shall be 300 to 310 degrees Fahrenheit, and your compaction temperature should be 285 to 290 degrees Fahrenheit. Your demixes, the temperature should be 310 to 320 degrees Fahrenheit, and your compaction temperature should be 295 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. It's important to know that these are for your mixes designated A and D. It is not what type of binder you put into your mix. It is for your actual mix designation that's in your contract. For any of your E mixes or mixes that call for a PG64E minus 22, your temperatures are based on your supplier's recommendations. Number 7 talks about your field correction factor. It's determined by subtracting your bulk specific gravity of the aggregate from the effective specific gravity of the aggregate at your design asphalt content. That definition is extremely important to know. Letter 8 talks about your permeability for your surface mixes, and it needs to be done in accordance to VTM 120. Table 2-14A is our recommended performance grade of asphalt cement regarding mixes that have wrap in them. VDOT stance is that we recommend dropping and going down a binder grade at more than 25% wrap. So for example, if you had an SM 9.5D with 23% wrap, VDOT recommends a PG64H minus 22. But if you had that same mix with 27% wrap, we recommend a PG64S minus 22. If you flip to section 211.04, our asphalt concrete mixture section, there's a couple things that we are going to hit. On your letter E, your type E mixtures shall not contain more than 15% wrap by weight or 3% recycled shingles. 211.05 talks about testing, and that the contractor shall provide the quality control and quality assurance necessary for the department to make sure that your mixes meet requirements. The second paragraph talks a little bit about the asphalt mix design technician, what your responsibilities are having this certification. As an asphalt mix design technician, you shall design and adjust all the mixes as necessary. You also may perform any of the testing for your asphalt mixes, and reviewing and approving the results of all testing regardless of who it is completed by. You shall always be available and have direct communication with the plant to make necessary adjustments to the mix. And you're ultimately required and responsible for producing a mix that meets these specifications. You also need to maintain current quality control charts, plotting your test results and the patterns that your mix is running. The next paragraph that we're going to look at is that the contractor shall perform at least one field super pave test per day per mix or per 1,000 tons if more than 1,000 tons of mix is produced a day. So you should be running a volumetric test every day that you produce, as long as it's over 300 tons of asphalt mix. The next paragraph that we're going to look at is our aggregate specific gravity and aggregate property test shall be conducted by a certified mix design technician, and that's done at least three times a year. One when you do your design, one right before production starts, and then every 50,000 tons of each aggregate size that you run at the plant during the year. 211.06 talks about the different testing that you need to do. Second paragraph, absent recovery samples. That's something that the department has the right to do, where we take your loose mix and we extract the binder off of it to make sure that it meets the required grading. We also can come to your plant and sample your liquid binder from your tank to make sure that it meets what requirements it's supposed to meet, and make sure that it complies with your job mix. If it doesn't, then the department will work with the contractor and the binder supplier to figure out what corrective action needs to be taken. 211.07 talks about plant inspection. The department will inspect your plants on a yearly basis. They can do it more frequently if there's a reason for them to go out and look at it. In addition, the contractor shall have all the laboratory scales as well as your gyratory compactor calibrated yearly by a third-party source. 21108 talks about acceptance and how the department will accept the test results and or the material that you put down on VDOT jobs. One important thing to note is that the contractor shall input test results within 24 hours of sampling to PLAD. That is unless otherwise approved by the department district materials engineer. That is a specification requirement. That is something that the department monitors very regularly. Acceptance for gradation in our asphalt content is based on the average of 8 tests for a 4,000 ton lot, and a lot's considered acceptable if the test results are within the tolerance allowed for that specific job mix formula. Those tolerances are found on table 2-15, and it will show you the plus or minus that you're allowed to have to your job mix target for each specific sieve. The paragraph under that table talks about your volumetric properties and the test results that you get on those. And if any field test does not meet the requirements in table 2-14, the department may require that production be stopped until corrective action is taken. The next paragraph will just tell you that the department can reject a load just based on visual inspection, and if it looks segregated or anything looks contaminated, it can be rejected, and it will be rejected without testing. 21109 talks about our adjustment system and how we calculate the adjustment points if your material does not meet those tolerance ranges. 211.10 talks about our referee system, and that's if the test results that either you get as a contractor or that VDOT gets as a department that you don't agree with. That something happened and you don't think those test results are accurate, you can request in writing to the department to invoke the referee system, which will consist of taking extra samples to make sure that either that sample was correct or to prove that it was wrong. The most important part of that is it needs to be requested in writing. 211.11 talks about handling and storing aggregates. You want to store them with good stockpile management. 211.12 talks about your plant. It talks about your scales and all the different parts of your plant and what the requirements are for the department. That's covered in our asphalt plant school, so we're not going to go through every single one of those points. 211.13 talks about your preparation of mixtures and the mixing times that are required for your plant. 211.14 talks about your storage systems. 211.15 talks about initial production. That's where we talk about our limited production when you're starting up a new mix to prove your mix designs. That's all for 211. We're going to go over section 248, which is our SMA section, just to hit a couple different points that are in that are different from 211. Everything in 211 is enforceable for 248. That's found in our 248.01. It says SMA shall be in accordance with this specification and section 211. 248.02 talks about the materials that are required for your SMA. Letter A talks about your coarse aggregate. One difference between our SMA and our super pave is that we have a 3:1 and a 5:1 ratio for our F&E, or flat and elongated particles. The next big difference is our table 2-24, which is our SMA design ranges. So that will tell you what your mixes need to be designed to for each specific sieve. Table 2-25 is your volumetric properties for your SMA, and table 2-26 is your allowable wrap percentages. For your SMAs that have a 64H-22 binder in them, you're allowed up to 20% wrap. And for your SMA mixes that have an E-binder in them, you're allowed up to 15% wrap. In section 248.04, there's your process tolerances. So those are the numbers that are added to your job mix targets to determine if your lots are within specification or not. Also in your book, there's section 315, which is your asphalt concrete placement specification. We're not going to handle it in this class because it's not relevant to the course material, but if you do need to look over it, it is provided to you in your manual. So that ends going through section 211 and 248. I do recommend going through and reading them from beginning to end to make sure that you understand what the requirements are and what you're designing to. Thank you.